talking about creating products that people talk about, creating new value opportunities. How does it apply to your company?
Thanks, Ton. Before I sort of dive in and answer that, I just want to do a tight linkage back to the innovation side. I've got this metaphor in my head that I just have to release on everybody, sorry. But I think one of the key things on the innovation side, not to forget, is that in many ways we forget sometimes how humans need incredible nurturing. So, you know, I was out for a long walk this morning. You know, we finally had some nice warm weather in Canada, and you could just see all the trees sort of reaching up to the sun. And I do think when you dig into what are some of the big worries that CEOs have right now, it's very much around balancing the ideation, the curiosity, you know, to the point we talked about earlier on the focus and the balance. But it's also ensuring that we are having deeper conversations, just because there's so many new dynamics that are hitting out all of us in so many different directions. In terms of your specific question, Ton, and just for the audience, we specialize in building guided selling solutions on top of Salesforce data sets, really to do a number of things with AI in terms of things like predictive forecasting or opportunity scoring, and some of the newer areas that are really quite intriguing, I think, to demonstrate innovation is, you know, we know so much about the human DNA, and there's so many digital breadcrumbs that we have about humans, and it was good to hear, you know, the stories about the wearable side, you know, that Zak's building out, and at audEERING, and building out the emotional and voice detection, and how our breaths, you know, and our wheezing give us context. But one of the big white spaces in sales right now is in the sense of, you know, understanding the culture that you're selling into and the different personas of the individuals, and actually mapping in real time who actually is engaged. And, you know, with the advancements we have now with natural language processing, we're able to actually light up, you know, those personas with the cultural fit. And so I think as we look ahead in this whole area of innovation, and certainly our direction, it's really about solving different use cases and, you know, going in pretty deep, and then being very, very agile to expand. What we often find, and I was smiling, I think it was Paul speaking about the need for focus. Not everybody is ready to adopt some of these innovative ideas, right? So you really do have to stay laser focused on the right client accounts, and I think we're at the point where the segmentation is going to be key now as to which particular segments are ready for this kind of thinking. And then the whole AI space, obviously, probably the biggest thing we've learned, and I think have finally put in place quite well, is it doesn't really matter unless the data that you're collecting is really robust and sound and statistically viable. And, you know, with statistics, you can come up with a pattern, but it may not be representative. So, you know, I think as the industry matures, you know, we're going to see more and more focus on responsible AI and ensuring that it really is bringing, you know, I think a pattern that we can make informed decisions against. So you asked me a loaded question, you know, Ton, but those are some of my comments.
Always. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, taking care of time here in this case as well, I want to move on to my next question, and I want to ask that to Patrik. So, we've just been through this pandemic, or actually we're still in it, but hopefully we'll see some light in the tunnel. So, do you believe that what has recently happened to us has changed the norms with regards to what we value and what we value less? And more importantly, what does it mean going forward? For you personally, but maybe most importantly for the business.
Yeah, I thought about that. My first sort of thoughts on a question like that goes to like the personal side, because I believe we barely scratched the surface of that on how it's going to be working and remote, and we already initiated conversations in the business, how we can reduce office space and so forth. But I wanted to focus on the business side, and I wanted to sort of couple the new value creation or building new value with the curiosity part, because we actually went into this crisis with a 1-year-old product. So last year we moved from only covering ocean freight and also doing air freight. But the caveat was that on the air freight, we only did the long-term market, so lengthy contracts, which the likes of, Electrolux, Nestle, Unilever, Lenovo, L'Oreal, all of them use that. But what happened overnight in Jan-Feb is that about 85% of all the belly capacity, which is what's like in the stomach of air freighters with passengers, just disappeared from the market. And with that capacity reduction, nobody could book anything on a long-term contract anymore, because the capacity was so stripped that prices did like 5-6x, right? So they skyrocketed. All of a sudden we sit there with a product that we have built up for 2 years, and 20% of our revenue base at this point was like air freight revenues. So what did we do when the product value went from 100 to 0? And the cool thing that I'm probably one of the things I'm most proud of is that I did not touch this problem myself as a founder. This was handled by the organization. The product department stepped in, found a completely new way to get into the short-term market with the existing customer base we had, and within 2 weeks launched a new product again based on a completely different data set. And over the next 4 weeks, we saw that product getting more and more companies behind it feeding their data in. So it went much quicker than ever has in terms of collecting data. And we're doing new sales based on that. So it's nuts to see what you can sort of foster in an organization in terms of, if you get them to be closely connected and customer centric, and use that information to sort of turn around, have the freedom and the flexibility to be creative and curious, and then put that together into value proposition that customers actually are willing to pay for. And I just believe that's a very tangible example of what you asked me in terms of turning around and changing things. It's because of this.
Absolutely, crisis. And that bridges very nicely to part 3 of this webinar, the art of being resourceful. And I think you highlighted already some of that. Well, I'll ask you a question on it later on. Maybe you can say something already about it. It's like, what did you do? I mean, what do you believe is the art to this? Because I've been in the business software industry for a long time, and I always, I come from the area where we had roadmaps of 2 years. Then it moved to agile, and we had sprints. But still, a lot of this roadmap was just occupied and just fixed. And how do you stay resourceful so that you can actually do what you've just did, switch?
Yeah, I think it's almost something, because we have within Xeneta as well very different personas, right? But I believe resourceful to me goes together with grit and naive. I believe you got to be a bit naive, you got to have tons of grit, and finally you can't let failures sort of or missed opportunities or whatever it is weigh too heavy on you. And it's the combination. It's something like a mental balance that you need to find, right? I struggle to sort of explain the exact secret sauce, but it's almost like a cultural element, and how you treat people and how you work together with this combination of being resourceful, never give up, keep on grinding it, be a bit naive in terms of your attempts on what you dare to explore, right? Because we came from the industry as well, fully knowing that everybody thought it would be impossible to do what we did, right? Or what we have done. So we were very naive in our approach, and I believe there's a huge amount of value in that. Right, but it's as with everything, as with curiosity as well, being focused. It's a balance you got to try and strike, and that's why it's a bit sort of connected to the cultural aspects.
Yeah, and that's exactly maybe where the magic is. But I connect with everything that you're saying there, and people maybe need to re-listen again to what you've just been saying, and we're going to publish this later on. But there's a lot of value in what you just said. So Dagmar, question back to you. We just you just highlighted already the product that you've been talking about. And that was in relation to the curiosity side and really picking up on the idea. But what you also, of course, did was, being able to switch with your company to actually start doing it and make sure that you are first to market with this. So, how did you achieve that? How did you ensure that your organization was as resourceful as it was for this particular scenario?
Well, I think what we quite good at is that we have a very modular structure. This is something that we've developed quite early on when we designed the products based on our experiences up front. When we founded the company in 2012, we merely had projects that we were doing. That means that our first clients, customers like the GfK, very big market research company in Germany, engaged us for projects that they were doing and that they were having interest in. And when we started to define the products, we always said we have to have a certain mindset that allows us to especially scale, that allows us to have a global application, and that allows us to react quickly and jump on opportunities. Because what we've always were confronted with is that everybody thought the way or what you are doing is so broadly applicable in a lot of industries. Aren't you doing too much? That was the focus problem that I think Paul has or Patrik has talked up front. And so we said, actually, the type of technology that we have, yes, it is applicable in various industries. And no, that doesn't mean that we don't focus, not at all. Because what we focus on is on this product scalability and modularity that allows us to act quickly and to act flexible. So that we have a very certain baseline that we always can use, that we can trust, that is accurate, that is robust, that is already developed. And on this baseline, jump modularly onto a different type of opportunities, whether this is basically in the health market, whether this is market research, whether this is communication, whether this is automotive, whether this is IoT, whether this is health. It always has the core technology and then the add-on module to the certain type of problem that I need to solve. And this core technology had always had to have the possibility of being easily deployable, dynamic, situative, and down to the individual with the highest potential of protection. That means that we were always deciding on what is our future with regards to how will people use this type of product, especially when it comes to the personal data, which always means that they have to be the king of the data, the owner of the data, and the ones to release the data to their situation, how they want to have it. So when we came back, closing the gap, with regards to the Corona situation, it was not actually a big thing for us to jump on the opportunity. We said, okay, what can we do with the things that we already have? What would be the next path to enhance or the next module for the next step? And how can we step out quite quickly here? And for us, that meant only a small refocus of things, not towards a special new opportunity, but just being as quickly and as easy moving in this type of direction. And I think one of the things that is quite untypical for us as a German company, because German companies are usually not there with a failure culture. So in Germany, if you have a company, if you're a small company, you're not allowed to fail, not at all. You're not allowed to learn from your failures, because this is something that is just not acceptable. Failure, it's a bad concept. Although everybody says, like Amazon, Jeff Bezos says, failure is very good because it brings you forward. This is not quite acceptable here. Also not if you're going for funding or something. Nobody here wants failure. So you have to keep the failure, if you're having failure, more or less under the carpet, and still, however, allow yourself and your team to look under this carpet, because of course you are not always not failing. Yeah, you always will fail on certain things, and it helps you tremendously to fail, because you then learn what you can do better, but you just cannot communicate it like you can, for example, in the US, where this is acceptable.
Yeah, true.
So from our perspective, this always meant we allowed ourselves to look under this carpet and look at the failures and see what didn't work out well. What was the problem here? And how do we build this product without being not focused and without being not flexible. So focus and flexibility was always in the very core target of what we were doing. And I think that is quite a cultural difference to other SMEs here. And that's probably maybe one of things that is due to the value proposition that we have, and also due to the fact that we are always curious, and failure always links to curiosity. How can we do that better? Are we curious to succeed?
Yeah, and courage is part of it as well. So how often do you look under the carpet? Is it something that you do on a regular basis, quarterly, for example?
Absolutely. Actually, I do that every week. If something doesn't work out, if we miss a deadline or something, we look under the carpet and said, why did we miss this deadline? Damn it, what was it this time? Yeah. Why did we not communicate clearly, for example, from another partner what we need? Where did we not look onto things that could occur that we haven't anticipated correctly? And what was the problem with this anticipation process? Why didn't we see that? And then we are learning, we're making a new iteration curve, and then we see, okay, next time let's try anticipate. Do we anticipate it now correctly? If we do, good, then we've learned something. If we don't, we'll have to try out something new.
Very wise words, and it proves again that you can that it is very wise to design for this, whether you're a small company or even a large company. And
yes,
it shows again. I want to move on with the last question of this particular section to Cindy. So what is the most valuable lesson that you learned in being resourceful, maybe across the whole life cycle of SalesChoice, and how has this helped you to come out stronger right now?
Well, the whole life cycle. I don't know if I've got enough time to answer the whole life cycle. I think I'll just zoom in on.
Focus on 10 weeks.
Yeah, I think the last 10 weeks is probably, otherwise I'll be here with far too many thoughts. I think the key thing is that what's happened is in Canada in particular, and our clients are mainly Canada and the US, is that we've been really staying close to them to listen to where they're at in relationship to the COVID virus and the kinds of things that are on their mind. So obviously different industries have been impacted in different degrees. So, you know, the clients that are, I call it booming, and we've got one of those that's booming because of COVID. They're in the logistics industry and they just can't keep up. They clearly are investing and have bigger appetites for new, I call it add-ons and solving other use cases. So obviously we put focus there in terms of being resourceful. And the other accounts that are really hurting, we've got one major account that's in the, I call it resourcing fulfillment of moving resources on site. And obviously with a lot of those resources not being able to access or be on site, you know, they're having to really think hard on their transformation. So I think partially our resourcefulness has been being attuned to which buyer profiles are going to be the best, and kind of mentioned earlier, probably the deeper segmentation positioning is really one of the key things that we're working on. I think in summary, you know, I would just net it out that, you know, some of the other colleagues have already mentioned it, but being value centric is sort of top of mind, preparing for growth in terms of investing in the next right moves. So we're investing, we just finished some branding, we've got a new website coming up, I mentioned the segmentation. We also are building on our product in some new ways. You know, that's the kind of the nice thing, with a little bit more time, you can start reflecting and maybe doing a little bit more ideation. So we're building out a new coaching overlay. So for the people that, everybody suffers from attention deficit or attention distraction. So, you know, if you aren't as analytically inclined, you can just get the sound bites in real time, just surface up to you like on a weekly basis that are relevant. And, you know, I think none of us can lose sight of the agility side of things. And I can't stress enough the maintaining the body and mind balance, because humans, you know, although we're all acclimatizing and, you know, obviously being in the tech software industry, we're all pretty used to being remote, right? And working, you know, and kind of your office can be anywhere. But at the same time, when you can't really go anywhere, that brings up another level of distraction. And so I do think everybody's got to be very conscious of their health, their mindfulness, giving people maybe more breaks. It's something I'm giving a lot more thought to, of how do we give more space to make sure everybody's feeling that they've got time to be, you know, to nurture even more. These are very complex, you know, topics, and, you know, being resourceful is not just about, you know, pounding the pavement, right? Especially now. Exactly. Wise words. And yeah, I mean, you can see that any company can really focus on their resourcefulness in a variety of different ways, just looking at the problem in a different way, and reflect a little bit more what you should do and what's best for the company and best for your customers.